Well, you're such a baby.
I'm 16. What's such a baby about that?
In the spring of 1965, on the set of what would become one of Hollywood's most iconic musicals, something unexpected brought everything to a halt. It wasn't a death. It wasn't a technical failure. It was a fart. Well, not a real one, but a long, wet, buzzing raspberry noise that echoed through the set like a mischievous prank. It came from the carbon arc lights, massive, clunky machines used to mimic moonlight in one of the most tender scenes of The Sound of Music. And it turned a pivotal romantic moment into a slapstick nightmare. Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer stood nose to nose in the famous gazebo scene, ready to confess their characters' love. The set was drenched in soft lighting, the mood carefully sculpted, and the entire crew held its breath. This was the moment, the heart of the movie, the emotional peak. But just as Plummer whispered, "Maria, I love you," came BRRRBPPTTT, a loud, wet raspberry. No, it wasn't a prank. It wasn't sabotage. It was the sound of the carbon arc lights. These enormous, antique lighting machines were used to simulate the glow of moonlight. But with age and wear came a noisy quirk. When the lights heated up, they let out these low, flatulent grumbles. And because the gazebo was such a confined space, the sound echoed like it was being amplified through a megaphone. The first time it happened, Julie and Christopher chuckled. By the fifth time, they couldn't breathe from laughter. Every romantic line, every attempt at intensity was met with a ridiculous pft from above. Plummer would lean in, channeling every ounce of old-world romance, and the lights would immediately mock him. Julie would try to deliver her line with grace, only to burst into laughter the second she saw Plummer's twitching face trying not to lose it. Take after take was ruined. 20 full takes were lost to the lighting's rebellious raspberries. It became a loop of professionalism crumbling under the weight of sheer silliness. The crew didn't know what to do. Dozens of people stood idle, trying not to laugh, while hours ticked by and the sun outside began to set. Eventually, director Robert Wise had enough. He scrapped the expensive lighting setup and made a bold choice: film it in silhouette. Positioning the actors against the glowing windows of the gazebo, he hid their faces and their suppressed laughter. The end result was stunning. A soft, mysterious, dreamlike image that became one of the most romantic visuals in film history. And no one ever suspected it was born from a comedy of errors. For decades, the studio kept it under wraps, not wanting anyone to know their most iconic love scene was nearly ruined by a farting light bulb. Over and over it happened. 20 takes ruined. 2 grown actors reduced to giggling teenagers. It was a disaster. Until director Robert Wise gave up on perfect lighting and filmed the entire scene in silhouette. Ironically, the workaround became one of the most beloved visuals in the movie. This chaotic moment captures everything about The Sound of Music's journey, a fairy tale on the outside, utter madness underneath. But to truly understand the film's wild evolution, you have to rewind, not to Hollywood, not even to Broadway, but to West Germany, 1956. That year, a modest German director released not one, but 2 films based on Maria von Trapp's memoir, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers. These movies, Die Trapp Family and its sequel, struck a surprising cultural nerve. Post-war Europe, still licking its wounds, craved uplifting stories. Audiences clung to tales of music, love, and survival. Films exploded in popularity, especially in Germany and Austria, and later trickled into South America. For many, they became symbols of hope in a continent trying to rebuild. But when American studios got wind of these European successes and screened the films, they were less than impressed. One executive reportedly compared the cinematography to a school play with subtitles. Another called it clunky melodrama. The editing was stiff, the acting overly theatrical, and the music too traditional, too niche. In Hollywood's eyes, it was unmarketable for an American audience raised on Ben-Hur, Singin' in the Rain, and Rebel Without a Cause. Still, something curious happened. Paramount sent Vincent J. Donahue, a Tony-winning director known for his work with Mary Martin, to scout material. He saw the German films and agreed they were awkward, even dull. Beneath the amateur production values, he saw something far more powerful. A story of resilience, a woman's transformation, a family's quiet rebellion through song. It wasn't just drama, it was theater. So Donahue made a radical pitch. Don't make this a movie, he said. Make it a Broadway musical for Mary Martin. That suggestion flipped everything. Broadway had never seen a story like this. The hills of Austria would soon echo across American stages, not in German-accented prose, but in soaring Rodgers and Hammerstein melodies. A film that Hollywood once laughed off as unsalvageable had just taken its first steps toward immortality on the back of a bold theatrical gamble that no one saw coming. That is, until Tony-winning director Vincent J. Donahue saw something deeper. "This isn't a movie," he said. "It's a Broadway show for Mary Martin." That bold idea, the trajectory changed forever. Maria had sold her story rights to the Germans for a mere $9,000, about $104,000 in today's money. Hollywood tried to buy just the title, but Maria refused. "If someone tells my story," she insisted, "they tell the whole story." Meanwhile, Mary Martin and her husband Richard Halliday were desperate to contact Maria to secure stage rights. But Maria was in Papua New Guinea on a missionary trip. Every new station she arrived at, she found letters from the Hallidays and tore them up. She had no desire to be a Broadway star. She was out saving souls. Fate intervened when Maria returned to San Francisco by ship. Halliday was there waiting, tickets in hand for Martin's Annie Get Your Gun. Maria was impressed, but honest. "I already sold the rights, but you're welcome to try." That try would soon become Broadway legend. The initial plan was simple. Mix traditional Austrian folk songs with a few original tunes. But Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein too had other plans. Asked to write just one song, they refused. "Our style doesn't blend," they told producers. "We do it all or we walk." Producers nervously agreed to wait. Rodgers and Hammerstein finished Flower Drum Song, then turned their full attention to Maria's story. And what they created was magic. The musical debuted on Broadway on November 16, 1959. Mary Martin starred. It cost $400,000 to produce, but earned a jaw-dropping $232 million in advance sales. The show ran for 1,443 performances. Mary Martin missed only one. Just months later, in June 1960, a Hollywood bidding war erupted. 20th Century Fox, bleeding from the financial disaster of Cleopatra, paid $1.25 million for the film rights. A clause promised the writers 10% of profits over $12.5 million, a sum no one thought they'd reach. They were wrong. Julie Andrews, fresh off being snubbed for My Fair Lady, seemed like a long shot. Hollywood thought she was too plain for film. Audrey Hepburn had been the prettier pick, but director Robert Wise saw something special. After watching unfinished Mary Poppins footage at Disney, he reportedly turned to his team and said, "Sign her." Now, Andrews signed for a flat $225,000, no royalties, no box office percentages. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $2.28 million today. But compared to the film's eventual earnings, a gross miscalculation. The Sound of Music would earn over $286 million worldwide. Andrews never saw a dollar beyond her original check. Meanwhile, Mary Martin had walked away with $8 million from the Broadway production. Fox would regret their choice forever. Casting Captain Von Trapp was no easier. Christopher Plummer hated the role. He thought the character was dull, lifeless. He nicknamed the film The Sound of Mucus. Robert Wise tried everyone: Sean Connery, Richard Burton, even Bing Crosby. Finally, Wise flew to London to convince Plummer personally. He agreed on the condition that he could reshape the character. He wrote to the screenwriter demanding better lines, more passion, and his own song. Even then, he drank through much of the shoot. Plummer later admitted he was drunk during the family's final performance scene. In his memoir, he called himself an arrogant young bastard. Yet, when the cameras rolled, he delivered. Even his most touching moment, singing Edelweiss with tears in his eyes, was filmed under the influence. The emotion? Real. But the sobriety? Not so much. And the voice? Mostly not his. While Christopher Plummer delivered the on-screen charm of Captain Von Trapp, the soaring vocals, especially the long, emotional phrases in Edelweiss, were dubbed by Disney's trusted vocalist, Bill Lee. Plummer sang during filming, but the studio later decided his voice wasn't quite lyrical enough for the big screen. The switch was made quietly without his consent. Plummer, who already resented the film's sentimentality, was livid. He felt stripped of part of his performance, calling the dubbing decision a blow to his artistic integrity. Still, Lee's voice blended so well that to this day, most viewers believe they're hearing Plummer's heartfelt farewell to Austria. And then there's the film's unforgettable opening shot. Julie Andrews twirling on an alpine meadow, arms wide, face lit with joy as the orchestral swell of The Sound of Music begins. It's one of the most iconic images in cinema history, pure movie magic. But filming it? A waking nightmare. The serene moment required a massive aerial shot. A helicopter, with a cameraman strapped to its open door, circled Julie as she performed her twirls in the open field. Sounds simple until you consider what it's like to stand in waist-high grass while a low-flying chopper blasts hurricane-force winds in your direction. Every time the helicopter swooped in, a downdraft hit Andrews like a tidal wave, flattening her to the ground. She was knocked off her feet 6, sometimes 7 times in a row. Her costume flew up, her hair whipped across her face, and she often landed hard, mouthfuls of dirt, grass, and grit replacing her lines. Trying to look blissful while bracing for a wind-powered body slam became a twisted game of endurance. Between takes, Andrews vented her frustration, shouting into the wind and joking bitterly with the crew. Final result looked effortless, but Julie's muscles ached for days. Her back was bruised, her legs sore, her patience worn thin. Still, she never let it show. She smiled, sang, and spun again and again until they got the perfect shot. One that would become a cinematic legend. One that made audiences believe she was floating with joy, even as she was getting body slammed by aviation. A helicopter flew just above her, the cameraman strapped to the side. Each pass blasted Andrews into the dirt. She was knocked down 6 or 7 times, grass in her mouth, pain in her back, bruises on her arms. It looked magical, she said, but it felt like a war zone. Other cast members suffered too. Daniel Truitt, who played Rolf, bleached his hair so harshly it never grew back properly. 5-year-old Kim Carruth, who played Gretel, nearly drowned during the rowboat scene. She couldn't swim. Julie Andrews was supposed to catch her, but fell the wrong way. Kim went under twice before being rescued. She vomited from the swallowed water. She developed a lifelong fear of swimming. Even the weather turned traitor. 1964 was Salzburg's wettest year in decades. Rain fell daily. 9 arc lights were brought in to fake sunshine. Continuity errors popped up. Kids lost teeth, grew inches, outgrew costumes. Nicholas Hammond Friedrich shot up from 5 feet 3 inches to nearly 6 feet. In some scenes, he had to go barefoot so the height difference wouldn't be obvious. On screen, Julie Andrews is warm, vibrant, perfect. Off screen, she was a force of artistic will. She was terrified the movie would become too sweet, a syrupy mess of cuteness. How do we make this real? She asked again and again. She pushed for emotional honesty, for truth over charm, for grit beneath the glitter. She rewrote lines, reshaped scenes, and grounded Maria's relationship with Captain Von Trapp. The film could have easily become a children's fantasy. Andrews made it feel lived in, human. Her instincts? Spot on. On March 2nd, 1966, The Sound of Music won 5 Oscars. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Sound, Best Score, and Best Editing. In a year of heavy dramas like Dr. Zhivago, the feel-good musical took the crown. It didn't just win awards, it smashed records. For 27 years, Gone with the Wind had held the title for highest box office. Then came The Sound of Music, knocking it off its throne with $286 million adjusted for ticket prices at the time. That's 283 million tickets sold. 1 in every 12 people alive at the time saw the film. From Africa to Asia to Europe, audiences sang along, even those who didn't speak English. With no streaming, no social media, no global campaigns, it spread purely by word of mouth. It became more than a movie. It was a worldwide phenomenon. And yet, for all its sweetness and song, The Sound of Music is also one of the most dishonest films in Hollywood history. Let's start with the escape. In the movie, the Von Trapps hike across the Alps to Switzerland. In reality, they boarded a train. No dramatic mountain chase, no secret route, just tickets, passports, and a departure from Austria to Italy, then Switzerland, France, and eventually London. The Alps they crossed, on screen, located dangerously close to Hitler's eagle's nest. The romance? Fictionalized. Maria didn't fall head over heels for George. She married him because he needed a caregiver for his kids. I liked him but didn't love him, she admitted. Wedding took place in 1927, long before the Nazis rose to power. Their age gap? 25 years. She was 22. He was 47. Even the kids were altered. The real Von Trapps had 10 children, not 7. The film changed their names, ages, and personalities. The real Agath was shy and quiet. The film turned her into Lissel, a confident flirt. And Edelweiss? Everyone thinks it's a traditional Austrian song. Even President Reagan quoted it in 1984. But it was written in 1959 by Rodgers and Hammerstein. It's American. Perhaps the biggest betrayal? Maria herself. The film is based on her memoir. But after selling the rights to German producers, she lost all control. She received no money from the Hollywood version, no creative input. She wasn't even invited to the 1965 premiere. When she asked to attend, she was told, "There are no seats left." Imagine being told you can't attend your own life's premiere, not because you were forgotten by history, but because you were erased by the machinery of Hollywood. The Sound of Music is a story of contradictions. It's the film that resurrected a dying studio. 20th Century Fox had nearly collapsed under the weight of Cleopatra's financial disaster. Executives were panicking, layoffs were rampant, and desperation ran deep. And The Sound of Music became a global sensation, earning hundreds of millions and becoming the highest-grossing film of its time. It wasn't just a success, it was salvation. And yet, the film's creation was anything but graceful. Behind every angelic note and sunlit meadow was a production fighting to stay afloat. Rain ruined weeks of outdoor shooting in Salzburg. Children grew visibly taller between scenes, complicating continuity. The budget ballooned. Tempers flared. The crew lived on edge. Everyone smiled on camera, but off camera, exhaustion ruled. It was a romance spun from real-life practicality. Maria didn't marry for love, not at first. The daring mountain escape? Pure fiction. The children are named, rewritten, reduced from 10 to 7. The film softened war, blurred politics, and skipped over genocide. It painted Austria as innocent, ignoring its own authoritarian past. Somehow, amidst all the rewriting and reimagining, something magical emerged. Julie Andrews fought tirelessly against the film becoming a sugary fantasy. She demanded honesty, emotion that felt real. Plummer, though cynical and often drunk, gave a performance so grounded it silenced critics. Robert Wise, a technician of rare vision, found ways to transform chaos into beauty, like turning a ruined love scene into an iconic silhouette. Children bonded for life. The songs echoed through generations. And the film, it transcended genre. It became cultural DNA. They didn't just make a movie, they made magic. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real struggle, real passion, real imperfections stitched together with music and memory. And maybe that's the real story, not the one we sing, but the one we feel.